สวัสดีครับ I'm Point from ค้นพบ Let's talk about self-acceptance, self-love, self-compassion, self-forgiveness. Being kind to yourself, in other words. Let me begin with this question. Do you think or do you believe that every human being deserves to be accepted, deserves to be loved unconditionally, regardless of his or her mistakes, regardless of his or her past, regardless of his or her status, success, material acquisitions. Right? I'm sure most of us will agree to this statement, and I'll give you another way to look at it. Imagine if you were a loving parent and your child is misbehaving, and you want to correct or you want to teach your child, and that might involve some scolding, which is natural. But when you scold your child, you make sure that your child understands that you're not upset with him or her. You're just upset and not happy about their behavior and the actions, so that the child understands that he or she is still loved unconditionally, so that this can become a constructive teaching rather than something that is seen as a judgment on the child that then comes to affect his or her self-esteem. So back to my question. Do you think and believe that a human being, all human beings, deserve to be loved and accepted unconditionally? But here's the interesting bit. If you answered yes to that statement, which I myself think in that way, if you answer yes to that statement, but when it comes time to apply that to yourself, when it comes time to love and accept yourself, be kind to yourself, be compassionate to yourself unconditionally, why is it that we often find so much difficulty in this bit, in this part? Isn't that interesting? So first of all, let's look at the gap here. There's a bridge, there's a disconnect, right? What is the cause of this disconnect? I would say that the cause of this disconnect, this gap, lies in a belief. A belief that you hold about you. It is your self-perception. It is your sense of self-worth, sense of self-esteem, we could say. It is a belief about how you feel and think about you now. Whether you think and believe that you are a likable person, a lovable person, a worthy person. And you see the idea here. But do you notice, point number one, do you notice that first of all, this belief is actually nothing to do with reality itself as it is, but it is just a belief which you have formed as a result of your habitual interpretations, your habitual way of looking at things, in this case, way of looking at and interpreting how valuable and worthy and lovable you are. It is the result of a thought that you keep on thinking in regards to yourself, about yourself. It is therefore actually based on concepts. I want you to observe that very clearly first. Notice that. Notice how actually the cause of this disconnect, in one sense, it could be argued is quite illusionary in nature. It's not tangible. It is made up by your conceptual mind, conceptual sense of self. I want you to notice that. And secondly, do you notice that which I'm sure we can all relate to, of course, myself included, which we're all on a journey to truly learn to accept and love ourselves unconditionally, right? But think about this for a moment. Do you notice how uh, your 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 beliefs about you, if you do not think that you are lovable or are not worthy enough, it implies some form of condition. And that condition is often in reference to an external factor. In that sense, you are literally delegating your power away. You're literally giving your power away to some external circumstance, to some outside external factor, which must be met in order for you to be able to feel good about yourself, if you see where I'm going here. In other words, you might say to yourself, or you might, whether you realize it or not, believe to yourself that I'm not good enough. And I'm not good enough because look at the result. I did not get the promotion at work. I'm not financially independent. I'm still dependent on others. I don't have anybody who I can rely on. I don't have anybody who I can trust. Therefore, I must not be likable. I don't have a relationship. I don't have financial success. I don't have material success. And the list goes on. My coworkers are better than me. My coworkers are more talented than me. I'm just holding a team back down. It is in reference to something outside yourself. In one sense, it is as if you are investing your self-worth in some outer circumstance, which, if you really think about it, is not fair at all, because you cannot really truly control it. Our job is not to control what our boss thinks of us, what our parents think of us, what our society thinks of us, what our friends think of us, even though we would like, I'm sure, to be accepted and for those perceptions towards us to be positive. But in one sense, you don't truly have control over that. What others think of you is their concern. How you respond to that is your concern. Wouldn't you agree? So in other words, we could say that wouldn't it be better if we learn to take back power, take back control, and instead of investing, whether you realize it or not, intend to or not, instead of investing your self-worth, self-value in outer circumstances, like your status, how much money you have, the job you have, whether or not you have a relationship, whether or not you have a family, blah, blah, blah. To undo that and bring it back to more internal sources that you truly have control over. Because these internal sources are things such as the effort you put in each and every day to be a better version of yourself. The intentions, the good intentions you have for yourself and for others. The kindness that I'm sure you show yourself from time to time, and especially the kindness and compassion that you show and extend to other people, your friends, your family, your pets, other living creatures, right? These things, wouldn't it be better if we focus on valuing and appreciating these internal factors? Because there are things that have meaning and value as a result of the way you look at it. You have control over this domain. So why not make good use of it? That's what I'm trying to propose here. You see, one way to look at it is the key in life is to realize that actually your experiences are happening within. And yes, shit happens in life. People may get upset at you for no apparent reason or for seemingly good reason. It doesn't matter. But what matters is how you choose to respond. And how you choose to respond, if you are able to recognize that your experiences are created from within, then you're not going to go out there and blame outer circumstances for feeling bad or miserable. In other words, we're taking back control, we're taking back power, we're taking back responsibility. We're coming back home to literally internal sources of how our experiences are created and formed, which if you really reflect on it, it's always you who create your experiences through the way in which you think about something, interpret an experience, process your experiences until it becomes a habit, until it becomes a belief. And the same thing applies to your belief about yourself, your belief about how valuable and lovable you are. The same thing applies to your self-perception, self-esteem, per se. You see where I'm trying to go here? So I know this may sound nice in theory, but then you might ask the question, well, where do I begin? It seems so difficult to begin to do this. Well, I'll give you enough food for thought. Imagine, instead of applying this to yourself, what would you do if you were to apply it to a friend? Say, what would you do if a friend that you hold dear came to you and shared with you their stress, their anxiety, their worries, which is essentially the same ones that you have? What if they shared that with you? What would you say to them? What if they came to you and were being unkind to themselves, saying mean things to themselves? They're in a dialogue, putting themselves down. I'm sure if your friend came to you, you would not be nearly as harsh to that person as you may currently be harsh to yourself. Isn't that interesting? We have to learn to be our own friend first. Because, why? Because you genuinely see value in your friend. You genuinely see good things in him or her. You genuinely see the positives in them. You may know that they're not perfect, right? But you're supporting them. You're encouraging them. You're seeing the good in them. You're seeing good in them. Therefore, you let that be a standard that allows and encourages them to rise to that standard on their own. You nurture them, right? Now imagine if that friend was you. See where I'm going here? This way of thinking helps us to understand that our experiences are created from within, so it would be wiser to give value and meaning and find value and meaning based on internal sources of appraisal, internal sources such as effort, intention, kindness, things that you can truly control, right? So that outside circumstances, other people's opinions no longer really have the pull or the impact or the punch that they used to. And this is much more liberating, I would say. The second idea that I want to propose here is simply this. Another perspective that we can take, which I borrow from many wise teachers, is if you think about it, the feeling of unworthiness, the feeling of not being good enough, the feeling of not being able to love and accept yourself unconditionally, in one sense, it is the result of the nature of the human ego mind. The human ego, which always feels fragmented, which always feels separate from others. And therefore, this implies a feeling of lack. It implies a feeling that you're never enough. It is the condition of the human ego. So from this perspective, one other training practice that I submit to you to try out, is to try to practice being aware of your thoughts, emotions, feelings. Be aware of the inner dialogue, the story that your mind tries to get you to believe about yourself, which is nothing more than a story. Watch it mindfully, watch it in a non-judgmental way, observe it. And we begin to realize that when we bring our awareness back to the present moment, we are safe because we are no longer identified with those thoughts and stories that our mind tells very negatively about ourselves, which are actually, if you think about it, completely illusionary in nature. It's an illusion. Your mind creates and hallucinates its own illusion. And you begin to develop some space you begin to develop some distance from it, from those mean, unhelpful, unkind thoughts that you may have about yourself. When you develop some distance from it, you have some more perspective with which to work with. And you are safe and grounded in the present moment, realizing that in the here and now you are still safe. In the here and now, you already have all that which you could ever need. Now, I borrowed this teaching from a lot of wise teachers because in truth, this teaching is quite profound and goes very deep. And of course, I myself am nowhere near truly understanding it or realizing it myself or mastering it myself. I'm also in the process of learning about it. But I wanted to share this as food for thought. And before I end the clip, I want to say my heart goes out to you if you are struggling with this issue. I understand it can be a very difficult place to be in, a very dark room to be in. I understand that, and I empathize with you. And, I'm not saying this in a way to say that, oh, it's easy, get over it. Not at all. I understand how immensely difficult these types of situations can be. And I wish you the best, and I invite you to consider the contents of this video that I have to share, to consider how to take back control of your sense of self-worth, your sense of self-esteem. Take back control and invest it in more internal, in more grounded sources. To learn to consider the nature of these thoughts, these beliefs, these attitudes, these thinkings, which are nothing more than concepts that are actually quite illusionary in nature. And when you view them from a distance, you see the absurdity of this trick or illusion that your mind is playing, and you begin to take them less seriously, and you begin to recognize their patterns more and more, and liberation starts to become more possible. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was valuable. I will see you next time. สวัสดีครับ